The latest series of The Crown has received plenty of criticism for its portrayal of the British royal family, but is it that any surprising, considering that few of us truly know what they're really like once the palace gates are closed?
Well, correcting an unfair portrait of her longtime friend, Princess Margaret, was Lady Glenconner's aim in her first book, documenting her friendship with the Queen's sister. Now she's written a second insight into what it's like to have a personal relationship with the royal family, and it's called Whatever Next.
So, Lady Glenconner is here now, and it's lovely to have you on. So, thank you for
having me.
in.
And may I just say that the reason I wrote another book was there was so much I left out of Lady in Waiting. And as I was 90 the other day, I just felt strong enough. I thought, what the hell, I'm just going to write what I want.
Well, a very happy birthday for the other day.
Well,
you certainly do not look 90.
Yeah, you look amazing.
Let's get back. So that first book, this was what set you off on the road to writing, was that you felt that that your friend had been misrepresented, that it was cruel.
Yes, I mean, I partly wrote... I was so angry. There had been a book written about Princess Margaret that was so untrue, and I just wanted to put the record straight. I mean, she was such an amazing friend to me, and so I wrote Lady in Waiting, which was amazing. I mean, I was 87 when I first wrote it, and it just gone all over the world, and I have letters from people from everywhere, and a lot of them said, you know, we weren't sure about Princess Margaret and all that, and because of your book, we see her in a completely different light. And I think I did that too for other members of the royal family.
You knew her from a very young age. I mean, you were little girls when you first...
Yes, when
quite naughty little girls, actually.
Very. I remember the first time I met Princess Margaret, I think I was about 3, and she was 5, and the Queen was a little older. And the minute I saw her, I knew she's my type of friend. And we used to have these little tricycles, and at Holcombe, which is a very big house I was brought up in, and I remember we were tricycling around the Marble Hall, which we weren't meant to do. And the Queen came down the steps in the hall and looked at us and said, Anne and Margaret, what are you doing? You're very, very naughty. And, of course, we took absolutely no notice. We screamed with laughter and went on. But the Queen was always looking after Princess Margaret. She's always, you know, she's a wonderful big sister.
Well, when you were at the age of 21, your mother was Lady in Waiting to the Queen, and that then led to you attending the coronation.
Yeah, well, I mean, amazing. I'm so lucky to have been asked, and my mother had just been made a Lady in Waiting to the Queen, so we were the only sort of mother-daughter in the procession. And I remember when we first saw the Queen, we had one rehearsal with her at Buckingham Palace when she wore a sort of curtain round her waist. We sort of wandered up and down, and then she said, well, I will look all right on the day.
Was she nervous?
She did.
Was she nervous?
No. She was absolutely extraordinary. And I remember waiting for her, the 4 of us, at the door of Westminster Abbey, and we could hear her coming, you know, the roar of people. And then round the corner came this golden coach. It was like a Disney film.
It was like a Disney.
And 2 pages opened the door. And we were, I suppose, one of the first people that saw her in her dress. Wonderful, beautiful. And she had such a beautiful figure, her skin and that dazzling smile.
Do you think that we'll see the likes of that again? I mean, King Charles's coronation is next year, but it will be quite different.
I'm devoted to King Charles. Very difficult. I always call him Prince Charles, but he's King Charles now. I think it will be much smaller. I mean, he's already said. I think, actually, there won't ever be another coronation like the one I took part in. With this, and it was just after the war, too, and I think that made a lot of difference.
Everything was so dreary as well, so you wanted a bit of Disney colour,
yes,
like you
and
say.
It was grey and, you know, still rationing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, this explosion of colour. I mean, I remember when we went through, we stood waiting. She never said anything to us. There she was with her back to us, and we had the train over our hands. And then she just suddenly looked round and said, ready, girls?
Yeah.
And off we went. And the whole of the Abbey was built right up, you know, to the ceiling. And the colour was like a medieval tapestry. I mean, and all the Commonwealth were in their national dress, and the peers and the peeresses in their robe. Fantastic.
With this book, and you've been terribly honest about... In the first book, you were quite humorous about your marriage.
Yes.
And this time round, I sort of picked out an incredibly selfish, damaged and occasionally dangerous man. I live with domestic violence and abuse for most of my marriage.
He was wonderful in other ways too.
Yeah.
But I think I wrote, partly I was encouraged by the Queen Consort, who's done an amazing amount for people who suffer from domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And I talked to my children, you know, and said, would they mind? And funnily enough, they then came out with their own stories that they never liked to tell me. And we had wonderful conversations, which we still do. And I just thought it was the right time. And I hope my book will help people.
I'm sure
There's some addresses at the back of charities that do help, you know.
And it can happen anywhere, in any marriage.
No, you're right. And I used to work for somebody called Erin Pitsey, who was the first lady to have these safe houses for people. And you're right. I mean, one sort of thinks of it, you know, maybe sort of the miners, you know, somebody like that beating up his wife, but it happens everywhere, I'm afraid.
When we talk about The Crown, and we said about that in the intro, we don't normally get to interview anyone off The Crown because they can't give their point of view because they are part of the royal family.
Well,
you yourself,
in The Crown too.
yes, I know that's what I mean. You yourself were portrayed in.
Well, I did watch I watched right at the beginning, which was rather good, the coronation, and then somehow it went terribly off-piste. And I know from my own experience, being in The Crown, that, I mean, what was in was absolutely not, it wasn't true at all. I mean, I'm sitting there, Princess Margaret, by a swimming pool, pimping for her, saying, oh, ma'am, do you like that young man over there with the cute bottom? You know, of course that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they have to do that, because really the real thing about the royal family is so interesting. They don't have to embroider it.
To make it up.
Like they
Well, Helena Bonham Carter played Margaret. Nancy Carroll played you. Did Helena Bonham Carter come round to you?
Oh, yes, she did. I was a friend of hers anyway, and she came a long time. She wanted to know how Princess Margaret smoked, how she walked, how she... all those sort of things, you know. And I think she's brilliant, as Princess Margaret. But again, she was made to do things that Princess Margaret...
Did you say to her, well, don't know that?
Yeah, afterwards. Because, you know, I said to her, I saw her, and she said, how did it go? And I said, well, a bit disappointing, wasn't it? And she said, yes. But she said, I'm an actress. I have to do what's written. You know?
Do you think it's damaging for the royal family? Does it hurt them, do you think?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, I don't think they watch it, luckily. But I think the one thing I minded very much about was when Prince Phillip was accused of killing his sister, because... which was completely untrue.
Yeah.
I think that sort of thing is so hurting.
This was the time we should explain that she had to
Yeah, well,
come back because of his
he was at school.
And she took a flight that she would never have taken.
Exactly.
But when she was pregnant at the time. But it would those two events were completely separate.
Completely separate. And I mean, she's actually coming over to her sister was getting married, I think, in London, and she was going to do that anyway. Nothing to do with Prince Philip.
But that did hurt the Duke, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
very much.
that's not fair, is it?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in. It's lovely to talk to you today, and this is the book.
The good thing is that that what's in here is true.
Absolutely. No, all the truth, yeah.
Yeah, I hope it's as
and I
successful
think
as your
it will
first one.
interest people. It's a much stronger book than Lady in Waiting, which was a great
Yes.
success.
Well, it's called Whatever Next. And thank you very much for coming in.
Not a bit.
Thank you so
Thank you very much for asking me.
Right.